started. My name is Michael Scott with HES. This is Patrick Montori. This is our 10th community meeting. Brownfield cleanup project.
I don't think it's ever.
Is this on? Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Coming through? Okay. So far to date, as of April 26, 2017, all source areas, source area 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 have been removed and back. All soils removed from SA 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 have been sent to Bayshore Recycling, located in Keysby, New Jersey. The soils from source area 4 were sent to a separate facility in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Will not be removed based on a review of the soil characterization data. There were no exceedance of the commercial cleanup objectives. In addition, we added two sidewalls to source area 2 due to exceedances of copper and barium. Those have been excavated and resampled and sent to the lab. We also added a source area around soil boring number 11. We named this source area 12, and this was due to an exceedance in the boring for benzopyrene. During the source area removals, camp monitoring was in place during all invasive earth moving activities on site. In accordance with the approved RAWP, excavation endpoint soil samples were collected and analyzed for VOCs, SVOCs, PCBs, total metals, and pesticides. Endpoint soil samples were taken from the bottom and sidewalls of the excavation footprint, and the results were compared to the commercial soil cleanup objectives. When the endpoint soil sample results did not meet the cleanup objectives, the DEC required additional excavation, and that's what we saw at SA2. The excavations were secured using fencing and covered in polyurethane sheeting for odor and dust suppression. This is a site map. I'm sure you're all very familiar with it, showing the source areas and the work zones where we've been. This is the southernmost portion of the site where we've been concentrating on. Source area 12 was added in here. Source area 4 is the red box furthest to the north on the site map. So during source area 1, we encountered two 2,000-gallon underground storage tanks. They were vacked out on March 31st, 2017 by Northeast Environmental. They removed 2,091 gallons of waste gasoline and fuel oil from both the tanks combined. The tanks were vacked out in accordance with New York State DEC and Westchester County Department of Health regulations and sent for proper disposal at Trinity Treatment and Recycling located in Bridgeport, Connecticut. On April 3rd, Northeast returned and removed both 2,000-gallon USTs, again in accordance with the New York State DEC and Westchester County Department of Health regulations from the site, and they were disposed of at PASCAP, located in the Bronx, New York. On April 11th, 2017, following soil removal, HES, we installed a soil vapor extraction well in the excavation of source area 1B, where the tank grave, prior to backfilling for monitoring purposes. This is a photograph of USTs being loaded off-site. Another photograph of the UST being taken off-site. This is a photograph showing the installation of the vapor monitoring well in the tank grave on source area 1B. It extends the perimeter. The SVE system sits on bedrock. As of April 7th, 2017, Environmental Bulkhead Corporation, EBC, has completed the installation of 10 pile tests. On April 4th, EVC installed the first test pile using air rotary drilling method. The following day, on April 5th, EVC continued drilling the remainder of the piles using a mud rotary drilling method. A closed circuit system was implemented for containment of the water used during the mud rotary drilling process. Over the course of the test pile installation, HES conducted vapor monitoring at a series of nearby well locations using a photo ionization detector and a flame ionization detector. When compared to baseline readings taken prior to the test pile installation, no anomalies were observed in the data recorded. This is a photograph of EVC on April 4th during the first pile test. This is April 5th with the installation of their retention basin during the closed circuit with the mud rotary drilling. Diochloro-difluoromethane, Freon 12, isobutane, and N-butane were detected in the antiperspirant aerosol cans collected from SA3. These cans were encountered in SA4 and were disposed of with SA4 soils at IESIA, PA Bethlehem Landfill Corporation, located in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So the same cans that we encountered in SA3, we ran into in SA4. SA4 cans were disposed of first. The recovered cans from SA3 still remain on site in sealed 55-gallon steel drums while awaiting transportation and proper disposal. They will be disposed of at the same facility as the cans from SA4. Revlon, the owner of Mitchum brand, had representatives from FPM Remediation who were present during the soil removal work at SA4. FPM collected soil samples from the source area and split a sample with HES for laboratory analysis of VOCs using the EPA method 8260 list. That leaves what's next. Since the water drilling method generated very little water spoils, this was the preferred drilling method over the air rotary. The water that did result from the test was sampled after treatment and revealed one exceedance of the drinking water standards. The exceedance was in antimony. The success of the pilot test demonstrates that the piles can be drilled into the site without issue. Ground penetrating radar was used on the areas of the site where the rapid impact compaction shall begin. The GPR report is still pending. Peak has sent letters to all 53 adjacent and nearby within 250 feet property owners. A second notice to 40 owners who did not respond to the first letter to perform a baseline foundation analysis before the rapid impact compaction work commences, which will be sometime in early May.
Can you repeat what you said about the drinking water standards and what exceedance it was?
Yeah, so the water from all of the drilling processes was vacked and put into a frac tank on site. The tank was a holding container, and while we were deciding what to do with it, we had two options. We could have it trucked off-site for disposal, or we could treat it ourselves. So what we did was we actually ran it through a carbon filtration system, and that removed any of the volatiles or compounds that were in the water itself, except for one, which was a metal, which can be treated, antimony, which can be removed with a micron filter.
And is that what you did after?
We're in the process of trying to filter the water, and then we'll retest it, and then based on those results, we can decide what we're able to do with it.
With regard to the rapid impact compaction, several previous meetings, the issues with compaction were discussed, and I thought that was off the table as a method of treating this site. So perhaps you could explain to me what's going on?
It was my understanding that rapid impact compaction was the method of choice. I think it was discussed and outlined in some of the previous meetings. Not really too sure what you mean by it.
We had, maybe some other people here won't remember, we had some pictures of these dust clouds going up and, is that rapid impact or was that something else? I may just be, confused.
Sorry, I can't remember. I think the dynamic.
Dynamic,
is
thank you.
different from
That,
the rapid impact.
that explains it. It's a different process.
Yeah, so this is a different process.
Okay.
The dynamic was the first approach, and then that was taken off the table and substituted with the
Thank
rapid.
you for clarifying that. One other question, ATS has been handling all of these meetings, and I was wondering why HDR doesn't participate. Mr. Musso's not here. You folks are the hydrogeologists on the project, is that correct?
That's correct. We're the environmental oversight for the
Okay,
committee.
you're not just the hydrogeologist, you're the environmental oversight as well.
Walk the mic over.
So the question was, HES is the environmental oversight for the project, and she was wondering why HDR or DEC haven't been present at any of the meetings. And HDR has been present at some of the meetings, but really this is just our presentation to the community to keep everyone informed and aware of what's been kind of going on. It's not really HDR giving the presentation. They've just been present, as a courtesy to the community.
I was just trying to understand the distinction between hydrogeology as the science and the environmental experts. One and the same. You are the environmental oversight, but I didn't know if you were also the experts in environmental impact. That sounded more like it would be HDR, those guys.
It's all basically one and the same. I mean, we're doing the environmental oversight, and as part of that, we're looking at the environmental impacts and how to approach it in order to do the remediation. And HDR is working alongside us, kind of reviewing our work plan and approach to be sure that it is, in fact, the correct way, the correct route to take.
Can you talk a little bit more about the timeline going forward of what is going to be happening between now and kind of September, even of construction and remediation?
Yeah, so as far as the timeline is concerned, I can't project out as far as, like September. As what she was asking a timeline. So as far as the timeline is concerned, I can't project out as far as September. I can say that right now, the piles will be continued. They'll continue the installation of those. I think there's something like 110 piles that need to be put in place. Right now we have 10. And then starting early May is when they'll begin the rapid impact compaction. And then from that, they'll be able to continue drainage basins and starting to actually put like caps and seals on the site.
Would you anticipate that the general construction of the hotel itself would begin by the fall and the cap would be finished, or is it really dependent?
I can't say. I'm not sure. I know that there's a lot of steps that have to happen before they're able to put in, the actual hotel structure. There's a lot of still site preparation work that needs to be done.
But is there a projected?
I can't answer to that, no.
In the last meeting, Bill talked about this, I don't know what it's called, I don't remember, I don't have my notes in front of me, but it was like a vapor testing system. It was like borings that were going to be done around the piles. Can you talk a little bit about that? Was that done, and what were the results of those borings?
Okay, so her question was in regards to the vapor points around the hotel foundation where they're doing the pile work and the rapid impact. So when they did the initial 10, we used 4 on-site nearby monitoring wells, and we monitored those with a PID and FID to get some background readings. Before the actual full-scale pile installation, we have, right now we're communicating with HDR and DEC to determine a final number of vapor points. It's somewhere between 6 and 10 that we're planning on installing around the hotel and the restaurant footprint. And then once those points are installed, we will monitor any of the soil vapor gases coming out of the soil while they're doing this invasive work.
Can we look at the schematic of the site while you're, yeah.
Okay.
Is that as focused? That's
Unfortunately, we don't have the drop-down screen tonight, so it's kind of a blurry vision. But did you have a question about any portion of the site?
I guess I wanted to know if this dovetails at all with the readings that the East Chester School District, they had some independent readings off the site of elevated levels of other chemicals. And I don't know if like TCE and benzene, etc. So are those things that you guys have, I think they're trying to determine if that's coming from the site or some other nearby site.
So her question was, does any of the monitoring on site that we're doing relate to any of the off-site monitoring that may have been independently done? I know that some off-site monitoring was done independently. I'm not entirely sure about what those results entail or who conducted it. During our monitoring, we did soil vapor extraction systems where we actually withdrew vapors direct from the soil before it even reached ambient air. We have that lab data. We did an ambient air sample next to SB1 when the tanks were being pulled, those two USTs. And then we have the data from those wellheads during the pile installation, which surround this footprint. And all the while, we're taking readings with the photoionization detector and the flame ionization detector around the proximity of the work zones, the drill rig itself, the borehole itself, all that's being recorded. And if anything were to spike or jump, we would see it and at that point question what's going on and how to reapproach it.
So you, yeah.
I think that the testing was done by a company called Ecosystem Solutions, and that was by the Village of Tuckahoe.
I think it's actually found in East Chester.
East Chester?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was, yeah, I guess.
I know it's not by you, but it seems like it'd be useful for you to know, and likewise for the information to share to happen. Like I have it, I can give it to you, but it seems like you should have it.
We probably do.
Okay.
I mean, we're just the guys in the field every day, so
Okay.
we probably.
But you're not like on the field like, oh, TCE, oodles of TCE. No.
Yeah. I think from what I heard of it, it wasn't. I mean, it was elevated from other readings they had, but it wasn't something each one we were worried about moving.
They were coming up levels 60 to 70 times higher than they should be.
It's-
Not anything compared to what you guys were showing.
It's not true.
I was trying to pull it up. The group posted it on Facebook, what their results were. They were incredible.
They're online. Yeah, the report's online. You can look at the report. Not yet. No, we don't have that yet. That hasn't been released yet. Sue.
I thought it was deemed not like dreadful evacuate, but requires further analysis and testing. Like East Chester is going to make an effort to figure out where it's coming from and determine if it's coming from the site or if it's coming from some other site that then would have to be remediated because they don't know where it's coming from yet. It could be coming from the site or it could be coming from somewhere else.
A couple of things about that. Ecosystem Solutions, Paul Simonelli, he's the school district representative, stated in his report that it's not coming from the site. DEC says it's not coming from the site. HDR believes it's not coming from the site.
He says he can't say.
His conclusion was it's not coming from the site.
I don't know how he'd know that if they're not sharing information.
Well, we are sharing information. The information that was done independently tested is not any information that we're putting in our reports. The only information that we're putting in our reports is stuff that we tested for, that we know in fact, okay, this was done in this method and this analysis.
But like the information that's available from the town of Eastchester is pretty substantial. But is Tuckahoe, is that, I just feel like not being a chemical engineer, how am I supposed to like meld
So what we've done is we've taken the stance in the village of Tuckahoe that it's two separate things going on here. It's the Brownfield cleanup program site, and we don't believe it's coming from the site. When I say we, it's the DEC, the DOH, the Westchester County DOH, HDR, which is the environmental consultant, and the town of Eastchester environmental consultant. Those entities believe it's two different sites. What we've done is the village of Tuckahoe, we've taken a look at that. There's 5 points on there, ecosystems. 4 of them are perfectly fine. There's one on the end of Hall Avenue that has a high TCE level. What we've done is we have to figure out where those TCE levels are coming from. So as a village, we pulled all the building files. We've spoken with owners of several of the businesses on the corridor there. We've started to map sewers because there's something with the sewers map. We've contacted Westchester County DOH. We believe is the lead on this. Had conversations with Westchester County DOH about if they have any concerns about the level. And we've also put in requests for air emittance permits. So any of the facilities down there may have a permit to do some sort of air permitting. So we want to make sure that those are up to date and those have been checked. So we're in the process of doing that right now.
Thank you, I'm glad you followed.
So that's Tuckahoe and Eastchester sort of together.
We're taking that report from Eastchester, where we've hired HDR, who was our environmental consultant, on a separate task order to look into the TCE issue that was found at the end of Hall. Yes. So the village has taken the lead.
But Eastchester is doing something about it too, are they?
We're in communication with Eastchester. We're
now
taking
you're
the lead on it.
taking the lead on it.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me the high-level TCE on Hall? What's the location of the assuming canister that was set up?
Yeah, it was assuming canister at the end of Hall Avenue. I don't know exactly where it was, but in the report it has.
It was on the other side of the fence, so like that.
Yeah, I don't know
It was the
exactly.
area between Fall and Marvin, not on like the area side, but the other side, somewhere in that.
So I also have the report right here, and I can read the conclusion off for you if anyone would like to hear it. Current data documented the presence of several VOCs in the outdoor air throughout the area east of the Brownfield cleanup project site. Consistent with values typically encountered in urban settings, no significant differences between round 1 and round 2 have been noted. Relatively elevated concentrations of TCE identified as a concern of the BCP site were detected. These values, however, represented concentrations typical for commercial or industrial zones, and the absence of any meaningful change in concentrations between rounds suggests that the source of this compound is not the BCP site. There is no evidence of a significant impact in the area east of the BCP site that is likely to have been caused by remedial activities. So that's the conclusion of their report, kind of summing it up right there.
Mike Giordano is generally here and has been really helpful with his pictures and said that was not able to come to the meeting tonight. Put a post on Facebook showing us some additional photos of some ongoing difficulties with the way soil that's being handled is being covered with plastic. We brought this up at several meetings, took some good shots to show what's going on. Doesn't look like that issue has been properly addressed, and it seems like it should be something just as simple as having some bricks on the site so they can weight down that plastic cover. I'm having a hard time understanding why we're still having difficulty with this.
So I know that Siteworks has been doing a tremendous job of trying to keep the site covered. I mean, it's a vast site. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot of exposed
These
soil.
specific cloud high mounds of dirt, really had plastic overuse. I'm sorry, I don't have an internet connection on the phone, so I can't pull up the picture for you. I'm sure Mike will be happy to send it to you. Yes, I'm glad they're working hard, but this isn't some small area of the ground. This is something clearly where they were collecting soil, meant to be covered because it had plastic, sort of. All right.
Yeah, so I know that the piles that you're talking about then, so she's saying that there's some stockpiles of soil that's to be used later on in the project, that during the containment, they've covered with plastic to kind of suppress the dust. And yes, I do understand that the wind possibly could have blown those tarps off. And
But they're lightweight, they look like they're fairly lightweight. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, but I do know that, you know, when they are on site, if they see a tarp come uncovered or something like that, they're very quick to cover it back up. When we're on site, we're looking at dust. We're looking to, you know, at any of the areas that aren't covered to be sure that dust isn't being kicked up. They're using water, they're watering down the site to keep dust suppression.
I don't question that during work hours they're as careful as they can be, but what's being spoken about here looks like a simple solution. They are on site 8 hours a day, 8, 9 hours a day, okay? Just some simple weights to hold that plastic down.
It is weighted.
Well, then it ain't working.
Yeah, so in that case, then obviously they'll need to add more weight.
Uh-huh. And how do we let them know that? Will you let them
That's what
know
we'll
that?
do.
Well, thank you. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
So, I understand you can't project through the whole summer schedule, but maybe the next month or 6 weeks, what do you think is going on?
So she was asking about, you know, the next 4 to 6 weeks, you know, timeline, what's going on with the project. And again, what we'll do is we're going to continue the pile installations. While that's going on, we're going to be monitoring the vapor points that are installed around that foundation area. They're going to do in May, we're looking to start the rapid impact compaction, and that's going to compress the soil down. And then from there, they'll be able to work on areas such as some of the drainage basins, parking lots, you know, start doing some more of the prep work on the site. But for now, you know, within the next 4 weeks, continuing the piles and preparing for the RIC.
I mean, May is next week.
You said 4 to 6 weeks.
Right, but are you starting the rapid impact?
They're anticipating early May.
After the vapor wells are in, I think, right?
Yeah, I think we're trying to put the vapor wells in the start of next week. The 9th? May 9th is what they're anticipating.
We'll do groundwater monitoring.
Yep, so Pat was saying that next week we also have scheduled another round of mid-construction project. We did, prior to any of this real invasive work, we did the sampling of groundwater samples from, I believe we have 9 wells on site. And we're going to do have we done one round mid-construction yet, or is this the first? This will be the first round of groundwater sampling that we do mid-construction. And then we'll compare this data with data from the samples taken prior to any of this work.
And your baseline data is from like early February or what?
We took that, I would say, was it October? Yeah.
And then, like, I'm sorry, I'm naive or ill-informed, but are the results, like, do you have levels for all the things you're finding? Or the fact that you're not telling us, like, it means everything's kind of okay? Or do you not know yet?
So we have standards that it is compared to, and we can look at exceedances and at different levels. And yes, the groundwater does contain contamination. That's why right now the groundwater that we've taken out of the ground is being held in that fractionation tank. Prior to being run through the carbon treatment system, the sample came back, you know, they're not compliant to be discharged. So we'll run it through the carbon, resample it, look at the groundwater, and then decide, you know, if it's been cleaned or if it's still non-compliant.
Could you explain that carbon filtering? that you didn't do? Is
Um,
that something that's done? I'm just want to be clear, and forgive me for asking more questions on this. You take a sample, clearly you're not ready to go because groundwater is contaminated. You run that groundwater through carbon filter. It may sound like a pitfall question. Are you filtering the sample that you took, or are you filtering something on site that you put a carbon filter in to see if you can prevent groundwater contamination? What are you filtering?
So,
Your sample that you already took?
well, she was asking, what was going on with the groundwater, correct? You were asking if the groundwater was contaminated, and if there's a guideline that kind of lays out what's considered contaminated and what's considered not contaminated, correct?
Right.
So, the groundwater in the ground does contain contamination. We have those results. They're available.
Your baseline.
Yep, you can look at those.
It was contaminated in October.
Yes.
It was, yeah. So your
So-
baseline is already contaminated.
Yeah, but so what we'll do when we resample is to look at, okay, maybe with everything that's going on, is it the same? Is it elevated? Is it decreased? Just so that we're aware of what's going on with the groundwater in the ground while the construction is taking place. That's why we take those samples. For the water in the tank, any water that we take out, since it's contaminated water, we can't put back into the ground contaminated. So we're running it through a carbon filtration treatment system.
Now I get it. The water that you collected in order to figure out how to dispose of it, you're trying to filter it, at which point it might be able to go back into the ground if it's no longer contaminated after the carbon filter.
That's correct.
Okay. Now I understand. Thank you.
I want to get back to the question I asked when I first came in tonight.
Okay.
Last Friday, okay? You guys were moving soil from the north down to the south there with that big, huge truck. So obviously, that's how they load it. Truck comes down, backs in to that area. Now on Friday, when that truck came in and dumped the load down there to the south. Actually, it was on the site where the hotel. As the truck was leaving, I heard the beeper. And then all of a sudden, I came through you guys running like rockets down to that area. I asked you that question when I came in. And you told me, what was the beepers I heard?
It's the leveling. So they have a laser level on the site, and they've got,
Pat was on site, so he can attest to that.
so they have a laser level on site, so it's a transit that shoots a laser around. And what they're doing is grading. So the hotel pad needs to be at a certain grade, a certain level. And so you have a guy with a stadia stick, which has a receiver on it at the height it's supposed to be. So when that laser hits the receiver, the transit beeps. And, lets out like a pretty loud, beep, 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 beep. And,
so you're telling me, young man, that it wasn't one of the monitors that was down
correct,
there?
yeah. Our monitors don't beep.
The community air
Like a
monitor.
siren.
Yeah, they don't have any audible sirens. What they do have is, if there ever is an exceedance, the dust monitors and PIDs in the camp stations send us a text message. They're constantly uploading the data to a server, and HDR can look at it real time. DEC can look at it in real time. We can look at it in real time, and they all receive the data at the end of the day. So if there ever was anything, they would see it, and if there ever was anything that happened at that moment, they would get an email. We would get an email on the site. They would get an email, so we could take action and do something about it. So, or we'd get a text message as well.
So what you're really telling me then, being that you were on site, that's all documented, right? What I seen Friday.
Yeah,
Right.
all the data's there. So.
I'm holding you to that. It was actually documented. Because I heard a different sound, you're telling me it's one sound, you're telling me it's the other. I seen that thing going off when that guy dumped that load. I saw it. That's when I heard it.
Yeah, so the camp systems don't have any audible tones, but it is an active construction site, and there are multiple things going on that do have audible tones. Like Patrick was saying, the transit, the trucks themselves, when they put into reverse, they beep.
No, I didn't, I know what the truck people do. I'm very aware of your beepers. I'm very aware of the beepers. Did I understand you right, the water, originally, when we had our geologist, and he said it was flowing north to south. Groundwater, is that still happening?
Based on the topography, that is the thought.
Okay, so if the water's flowing north to south, are you telling us here tonight that you're containing that water where it's not going south anymore?
So the idea of that site is it's a quarry. It has stone sidewalls where they excavated down. So you can think of it almost as like a giant bathtub that has been filled with debris and material that's containing that. So we have groundwater on site that we're sampling. I know the DEC has done some off-site wells, and they've taken samples, but we're looking at the water that's on site.
I understand, that's what I'm talking about. You're telling me, and everybody here, that you're containing the water right now on your site, and it's not going down to Brownfield. It's not going in any of that area.
There's no absolute containment. There's different water tables, different aquifers, confined, unconfined. We're hitting different aquifers once we get into the bedrock than we're seeing in the unconsolidated material. And a lot of our wells are varied depths for that very purpose, so that we can look at the groundwater at different depths throughout the site as we're covering it.
So then, you're telling me now that the water is actually still moving north to south, and it's getting off the site.
Groundwater is going to move no matter what.
But it's getting off the site.
I can't verify that.
Or we're containing the water that we take out from the groundwater.
I understand that. Like I said, I was there for that first well when all that black water came up. And then all that other water came up. And you told me that was all contained. And then we sucked it up and put it in a tank somewhere, whatever. I'm just confused about that, because I was right there. Why would those two guys run that fast down to that area? That's what's mystifying me. Why would they run like that down to that area after they dumped those loads? And my concern is this: were the vapors that high?
No,
Did you have any exceedances that day on the camps?
no, we didn't have any dust or any vapors. Sometimes we have to move the camps in the middle of the day, and I don't know why we would be running, but we could have been breaking down the camps to move our upwinds to the upwind position and down into the downwind position.
You know, young man, it was the reason I'm on this because if I believe everything everybody says for the last 3 years, I can go down and eat that burger and I'll be all right. According to everybody, that area is as clean as a newborn baby. Oh, clean! But it bothers me because these little things happen. And then when we question it, we get the answer that you gave us. And I was under the impression you said the water wasn't going beyond his site, but now obviously it is going beyond that site. So the water is contaminated then, right?
The water on site is contaminated.
Okay, to what level?
You can look at the reports. I would have to look at the data to give you any numbers or values.
We've been working on this project for 3 years. You would think with all those tests and all those wells and everything else, somebody would be able to give us an idea how contaminated that water is.
There's different levels and different types of contamination. There's metals and
I understand that, but it would be nice if we can hear once from you, HDR, whatever they call, with DEC or the DOA about how contaminated it is.
All those values and reports are public. You can take a look at them.
The one completed that.
Well, we're not, but the work that we've been working on, I mean, you have that data up, right? You can go and look at the data yourself and compare it to the values and levels. And
Okay, on the 10 wells, on the 10 files that you put down there, I was up near my fence, I was sitting here for quite a while, I was watching them. To be honest with you, the noise is not as bad as I thought it would be. I'll be very honest with you.
that's good.
I'll be very honest. But my question is this: when you're piloting, and when those things are going down to the bedrock, they're going down there to those areas. Those chemicals will just be cool for the barrel. If they're not been disintegrated, they're still there at your puncture, things like that. I mean, I didn't see anybody after they piled that. I was curious because I was waiting for somebody to come there with a cement truck or something and fill those holes, but I didn't see any of that happen.
All those piles have been, rebar has been placed and cemented and concreted. They've done load-bearing tests on the piles already. That work has been completed. They didn't bring a cement truck on. They did the mix themselves on site.
So they mixed the concrete after they hit bedrock, those piles,
All 10 of those piles have been filled.
and they filled it.
Yes,
To what level? To the hotel level, the ground level?
to surface. To the surface, the piles maybe stick up 2 or 3 feet from the ground.
Okay.
Yes.
You said you looked at the contaminated groundwater. You have a reference point, a base point of where you did it before you had any kind of intrusion activity. So now you're going to look at this groundwater after you've done the intrusion work. What are you going to do with the numbers? Let's say the numbers are here and they skyrocket. What do you do with those numbers?
So what you're saying is that we're going to look at the baseline data, then we're going to look at the data after we, mid-construction, with the results that we're going to sample this upcoming week. And kind of back to what Joe was saying is we're going to look at, okay, did we see a rise in only the southern portion of the site or just in the middle of the site? We're going to kind of look and try to determine what's going on with any of the contamination. Did it not change at all? Just to get an idea of what's going on with the groundwater. Groundwater is very variable. It's really hard to predict or determine what's going on with it, which way it's moving. That's just the nature of it.
Well, my question is, what's the point of doing it? Are you going to do anything about the change in the groundwater? Let's say the contamination goes up 500%.
Then we'll have to look at it and try to determine what's going on, and then reassess our approach or determine what our next step would be. That I can't answer right now. I'm not sure.
Do you have any idea what you might do?
That would be something that Bill Canavan could probably answer. I'm not sure.
You don't have any idea?
So if the groundwater levels were to spike in one of the wells, I'm not sure what the next approach would be. No.
You've never done that before?
I've never seen the groundwater levels spike.
And if they did spike, you really don't know what you're going to do.
We would probably try to determine what caused it. That would be the first action. From then, try to determine if we can limit it. That would be the most.
How would you limit it?
Again, by determining what caused it. So we try to figure out, okay, was it the rapid impact compaction? Was it a pile that maybe we put in? What may have caused this? What contamination are we looking at? Is it a metal? Is it a VOC?
How often do you measure this too?
How often? Well, we did the first round of sampling back in October. We'll do one next week, mid-construction. I'm not sure if we have a second mid-construction planned, and then we'll do a third or fourth final round at the end of construction's completion. And that's for the groundwater.
Are you saying you can actually remedy the problem if the groundwater spikes up in contamination?
No, not necessarily. That entire site is, I think groundwater depth is 27 feet. We have 80 to 90 feet to bedrock in some locations. That's a lot of groundwater in a large area. So, we're just trying to work safely with it and around it.
When you say safely, you mean so it doesn't affect you?
So that it doesn't expand.
Expand beyond.
So as a scientist, part of it is understanding what you're working with and what's going on in the ground. So we're trying to just monitor that and fully understand what's happening in this quarry in the landfill, what kind of contamination we're looking at, what's actually in the water. Say it be metals or VOCs. We encountered those USTs, those gasoline tanks on the site. From that, we looked at the soil. We found bedrock. I think it was at 15 feet. And so since there was no water there, but we knew that there was contamination, we put in vapor monitoring wells so that we could monitor the soil vapors. So as a scientist, again, it's understanding what's happening in the site so that we can approach it and try to work around it.
So next meeting, you'll have some more data on the groundwater. Is that?
I don't know if the data from the groundwater will be in by the next meeting, but the sampling event should take place.
So then the pile driving is going to continue, but the tests from the groundwater will come back. Is that correct? Is that what's happening?
So the vapor monitoring points, they will go in before the pile driving and rapid impact compaction. Those will be continuously monitored during those entire processes. The groundwater, we just kind of picked this as a date mid-project that we wanted to do it. There's a lot going on the site, and we thought it would be a good time. There was no, finite date to do the watering sample. It's just so that we can have a better understanding of what the groundwater looks like.
And if it's being adversely affected by something, there's not necessarily anything you're doing. It's information, but it doesn't necessarily lead you to a next step, right?
So, it is information and it's understanding what's happening. So say there was a UST that was punctured and we noticed that gasoline had been leaking. That we would know that by looking at the groundwater then, or have an idea that maybe that was something that occurred. So that's why we're doing the groundwater sample.
Okay, if you could make that determination that it was a UST that was punctured, would you take some action to remove whatever that tank was? If you could identify the source of where the leak occurred.
We couldn't pinpoint the exact location, but it would give us an idea of if anything changed.
I understand the question that you're asking. Knowing that something has changed, and if that doesn't give you the ability to do something about it, that's a tough situation for residents to deal with. I mean, knowledge is great if you can use it in some positive way. And believe me, I am in no way suggesting that you stop your testing. Please, do whatever you can, because people need to be able to take precautions. But it's almost sounding as if you have more ability to mediate for air quality than you do for groundwater quality when you're doing this project. When you build this hotel, you have venting, you have things that you can do, whereas with the groundwater, it's okay, we know.
The air is probably more of a concern, right? Because we're breathing it. The groundwater, we're not drinking it.
The groundwater is, for the most part, contained on the site.
I think both are concerned, but in terms of mechanically speaking, it does sound like you can't do much about groundwater contamination, except if you know it's there, warning communities that might be, let's say, south, okay? If they have water coming into their communities, they shouldn't have it coming into their backyards or gardens, but if they do, then you should have the responsibility for notifying them. But other than that, I'm trying to understand what the purpose behind the testing. Document it, test it, but of course we're going to want to know what the solutions are.
Yeah, and again, understanding what's going on around and in the site. That's why we're on the site, so we can understand what's going on the site. you know, the idea is that, yeah, some of that contamination most likely occurred from compounds that have been identified in the soil, in the landfill, that may have led to groundwater contamination. But we don't know if all of that contamination, maybe there was an off-site source somewhere that was dumping something in their sewer drain that then ran into the quarry site and is hitting one of our well locations.
But what you will be able to determine visually before and after testing, you'll be able to determine to some extent whether it's your remediation activities that have increased the levels as opposed to what was going on groundwater-wise in the site, just naturally.
Yeah, so
So you'll have your baseline and then you can look at this and say, oops, I guess, you know, putting these piles here did have an impact or whatever. You'll know from your baseline as compared to.
we'll see, if there's a change, then we'll be able to see the change.
Okay.
Yes?
I mean, maybe, I thought that, my understanding is that groundwater is just as important as air because groundwater can spread the contamination. From what I understand in Bronxville, some like country clubs or maybe schools, they're landscaping with groundwater, with well water. So if you know after the water is contaminated, do the piles kind of spread, change the way the water runs in those aquifers? If you're drilling 160 whatever piles, does that change it? Does that spread the contamination further?
The piles wouldn't, because the piles are sealed, everything's concreted and grouted. Any off-site wells that may be used for, say, irrigation or anything, any well put in, the Department of Health is, you're going to want to do water testing on it to look at that water before you spray it onto your lawn or anything. So if there's any concern with the groundwater on our site and someone not knowing what's going on in, say, an off-site location, then they would have seen it already.
Because they do testing regularly?
Well, when they install, whenever someone would install like a well.
Installed like 40 years ago. I mean, it's not that it's installed now. I don't think. Again, I don't know all this, but if it was installed 40 years ago, 50 years ago, it's not been tested.
Yeah, but I mean, this site goes back 40 to 50 years, so.
Yeah. But I just mean the testing that you're doing, it's not informing the work you're going to do, no matter what you find, because you're going to be drilling the piles and doing the rapid compaction. That's going to happen. You'll find out the information after. So that won't have any effect, you're saying? The piles and all this other work that you're doing won't have any effect on the groundwater if it's 20 feet down or whatever?
Well, that's why we're doing the monitoring to understand if it does or not.
But how will that inform what you're doing?
So if during the project we see that, okay, there is an elevated level of something or something's different from the baseline readings, that will take time for us to actually step back and really analyze it, look at it, and try to determine what is causing that. There's so many different variables that can contribute to it that I can't just say, okay, it's the piles or it's the rapid impact. It really requires a lot of thought. But if there are elevated readings or something's changed, that's stuff that will go into the report.
But I understand it'll go into a report, but what will you do about it if you find that? Like, is it going to change the way the piles are driven or change the way, say that you find out that it is affecting the piles of rapid compaction, is affecting the groundwater? Will that change what you're doing?
Yeah, there are a number of documents that have already been drafted that explain what would have to happen. The work would probably have to stop, and DEC and HDR and HES have to get together according to these documents and figure out, do they have to dig up a source? Is there a tank there? If there's petroleum spewing out of the ground, the work's going to stop on the site, and that area would have to get dug up.
So when will that groundwater testing come back? When will you find this information out? Will you find it out after you're working?
Well, there's a few different things you're talking about now.
Mm-hmm.
One is if during a pile drilling something strange happens.
Yeah.
That's where the reports now say, that have been reviewed by everyone and the village, that the work would have to stop and that area, that specific spot, would have to get evaluated. What is being talked about right now is site-wide groundwater sampling and comparing not just really what was done in October, but all the data, right? I mean, there's lots of groundwater data. There's not a municipality in at least this state that I'm aware of that meets the drinking water standards. These numbers that we have in New York, unlike for soil, for groundwater, there's only one set of numbers. It's drinking water numbers. Okay, they don't have like a level of standard that we can compare to really know, is this suitable for an urban environment? We just don't have that in New York. They may have that in other states, I don't know, but we don't have that in New York. So when there's an evaluation of groundwater, it's really, is it just what all urban areas look like, which is not clean compared to those drinking water standards. That's why we don't drink groundwater. That's why you're not drinking this water. That's under the ground. They may use it for irrigation in certain parts of the area, but that's it. It can't be used for drinking
Or
water.
what if people's homes flood or get water in them and they're near the site, they're south of the site?
That is, I mean, when you live in an urban environment, the water is just not.
So this is just average for
It's
an
just
urban
not clean.
environment?
I mean, it's just not clean.
I think what we're trying to get at though is that we know what the baseline is. We understand that groundwater is not drinkable. I'm not gonna go out and drink from a puddle of rain today, like that's pretty obvious. And I'm hoping that my children don't do the same. But the question is, if you find that it's elevated, yes, we're very concerned about the air because we breathe that, but we're concerned about this groundwater because if it is flowing off the site, it goes into the river. That affects ecosystems.
Groundwater from one site does not travel miles away. It just doesn't. It's this and your, because of the fact that the historic landfill was larger than just this one site, that's what DEC is doing. I mean, they're doing the off-site evaluation of.
Right, but that offsite hasn't been disturbed yet, so that's unlikely to be, volatile at this point. Is the wells that they're doing over there, it's not gonna be super volatile because they haven't disturbed that
No,
site
but
yet. We're talking about the
disturbance-
site that you're disturbing and drilling into right now.
Yeah, but DEC has already started those off-site investigations. We already have data from
Right. But
Margaret.
investigation is different than drilling a pile of bedrock.
Yeah, but that data that already existed before those piles were drilled is gonna be compared to after the piles were drilled. That's exactly what was just.
Even
done.
on the off-site portion.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Okay, we're
Exactly.
talking in circles. I don't think anybody's really answering anyone.
So explain your question again.
We want to know what happens if you get that groundwater testing. Like, so you're doing the test next week. Wonderful, perfect. I understand that. But then you're going to continue to do work until you get those results back. So then the results come back and they're elevated. What happens then?
What happens is that's why the SVE wells, which we've described a long time ago and which we'll describe again in future meetings,
I understand what those are too.
that suck back the bad vapor in the groundwater at the property boundaries. That's the end of the remediation that hasn't taken place yet. That happens at the end. So we put in more wells, more SVE wells, to answer your question. There would be more. Let's say it's moving that way. Which way is the groundwater moving? Yeah, that way. There would be more at the property boundary to capture that.
That was the answer we were.
So that part of the remediation has not been done yet.
Okay.
And all this data that's being gathered now will inform that decision. Right now, I think we have planned 6, right?
6 to 10 labor wells.
No, I'm talking about the SVE wells.
SVD, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think there's 6 right now, but if that were to be occurring, there would be more at the property boundary where it's leaving the
See,
site.
what we've been told over and over again is that the responsibility of the volunteer is not to let contaminants leave the site.
Correct.
Whether that's in water or.
And that's the
however
method
other-
for not letting that happen.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I'm late, so if this has already been asked, let me know. The soil testing that was done of the soil in the excavation where the 2 petroleum bulk storage tanks were removed. Do we have the results of that testing?
I don't believe we do yet. Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, have we received it? I don't believe we received that data back yet.
And how far down did the excavation for the removal of the contaminated soil go?
We went 15 feet and there was bedrock. So in that, if you want to go back to the slide, we installed a soil vapor extraction system in that site. This is the excavation. It's on bedrock. It's about, I believe it was 20 feet in length by 10 feet in width. And it's backfilled with gravel and then a geotextile and then soil on top of that. And then that will allow us to look at any vapors that may be trapped in any of the sidewall samples that are still in place.
There was an excavation just south of that, next to the fence. And from my observations, the soils were very dark, just like this was. Is it possible that the petroleum from these tanks leached further down, not just the 15 feet or below, further down, and that site also needs to be excavated? We divided it into 2 sections. We had source area 1A, which was the opposite side that you're talking about, and then source area Right.
1B, which was where the tanks themselves actually were. And we took endpoint samples throughout source area 1A. So we have results of soil data from that portion of the excavation.
And are those available?
Do we have those yet, Patrick?
I don't think so.
So all of this work is being done and we don't have any of this analysis?
If the data hasn't come back in yet, because we don't want to leave the excavation hole open.
Understood.
The idea is to try to backfill it, keep it suppressed. So in source area 2, we backfilled. 2 of the sample sidewalls came back high in copper and I believe barium. And we went back and re-excavated and resampled. Yep.
Should be back pretty soon.
For both sites, for both excavations? Is there anything that would cause you to go further down in terms of what the results would be of these tests?
We're not going to go past 15 feet.
And are there any wells there to test the groundwater just beneath that?
So we didn't hit any groundwater in this excavation because the bedrock was so shallow, so that's why we installed the soil vapor well.
Can I add one more thing? So with each of these source areas, because it's soil, we have compared to numbers, okay? There are numbers that are based on industrial levels, commercial, and residential, and we have to compare all the bottom of these excavation pits and the sidewalls to the commercial cleanup standards.
Understood, but most of these soils are off-gassing as they're being dug. They're off-gassing, so you're not getting accurate estimates when you actually go in and take a sample. It's after the fact.
No, that's not how sampling works. You want to explain how you take a valid soil sample?
So each sample has a hold time and a procedure to collect it. The sample is collected, the excavation's open, the sidewall is scraped, they'll go in, take a clean sample off that sidewall, or a sample off that sidewall, fresh sample I should say.
Immediately after it's done.
And then, so if the excavation was open and say 2 hours later we sampled this sidewall, well they'll go in and scrape off a portion of it to get a fresh soil sample, which will then be screened in the field with the PID, the FID. Those recordings will be taken and then immediately placed into glass jars, which have preservatives, and then placed onto ice and then sent to the lab. And there's holding times for that where the lab is able to detect these compounds through their analysis. Yes?
So I understand what you're saying about the groundwater testing and the soil testing, but for air testing, it's more like real-time data, right? So you would know, you're getting a text or you're getting an email saying something's triggered sensor, right?
That's right. So that text or confirmation on something being triggered is based off our CAM systems. So we have the CAM stations set up around the proximity of the work areas, and that's monitoring for dust levels and VOC levels. Aside from those CAM monitor stations, we're taking live readings as well. So we'll walk around with handheld devices, take the readings like on site. You know, if we think that you know, this portion of the site, this sidewall particularly, just so to say, seems like it was more impacted with the you know, petroleum product. We'll kind of concentrate on this area, or the wind's blowing down, you know, downwind. We'll stand downwind with the handheld, you know, right up close onto the excavation within 10 feet or so. So it's more than just the camp stations. We're doing live monitoring as well.
And then and then that information is ending up where? And the fact that like maybe I don't know, does that mean that it's been okay so far, or? So,
I mean, we provide all this information. We have a daily field sheet that we'll log our readings on the camp sheets from the camp stations, and we'll also log our handheld readings, you know, and what location it was and at what time, and all that information, what earth moving was going on, what projects were happening where, who came on site, who left site, all that at the end of the day is written up into a report and then emailed. We send it right to HDR. HDR reviews it, looks at it, so that information is all available.
It's available on the
website.
Tuckahoe
But
website.
is there, I mean, I don't want to sound alarmist because I'm not actually, I just feel like, can you envision a scenario where something happens and like you're calling, I don't know, who you would call, Cuomo, and say like, tell everybody at Waverly Elementary School to stay inside? Like, is there a level where you're like, holy shit, let's not wait till the end of the day to say this seems super bad?
So a situation that was kind of a surprise to us was when we uncovered these UST tanks. That was kind of, we were digging along, we didn't know they were there while we were digging, and then we encountered them. And there's procedures that were in place, so, you know, immediately, okay, let's stop digging, let's assess what we're looking at, let's try to contain, suppress any vapors. We sprayed foam to the excavation. We determined how many tanks there were, tried to determine what direction the tanks were laying before we continued excavating out. You know, so if anything, there are protocols in place that if something pops up that is unexpected, that we take to slow things down and really kind of assess how to approach it the correct way.
Again, in these scopes of work that I was mentioning, that we've had to provide for each step moving forward, if anything like you're describing were to happen, work has to stop on the site. I mean, it just cannot continue. That's what the documents say. But just nothing like that has happened.
In addition to work stopping, I mean, I learned something interesting tonight in that there's no audible alarm on your camp monitor. So walking by in the community, we don't know that something has been detected. What I think the question is, how does the surrounding community get notified in an alarm that they can hear should they need to evacuate if something really serious happens?
Every day.
You know, we're not going to hear an alarm.
Every day that data is being looked at by
Right, the data's
multiple
being
people.
looked at, but there's nothing. How is the community notified if there isn't an audible alarm system?
There's no data that has been found on this site that would trigger the kind of reaction that you're concerned about. It just hasn't been found.
That's good news to hear, but I'm asking, should something happen, how do community members literally, in quotes, hear it? How does
Yes.
the school in Eastchester know, mommy and daddy take your kids home? How does that word get out? You look at the data, there's something that's beyond what you could have predicted or expected. You know, accidents are never something that we could prophecy about. An accident's an accident because we didn't know it was going to happen. But when there's no audible alert in the community, how do they know what to do for their kids?
I guess the question is an emergency evacuation procedure been developed for Eastchester and Tuckahoe should a major emergency arise as a result of this
And
development?
has Waverly School put in any kind of audible?
There is no data from this site that would require that.
But this is something that should have been put in place before this development began.
This
in
site is not
anticipation.
contaminated enough for that kind of, for any kind of evacuation procedure to be in place. It's just not, I'm sorry, but there's just not the kind of data. This is not, the only site I'm aware of in the state of New York where there are evacuation procedures in place are radioactive sites, okay? We've tested for radiation here. It doesn't exist. So there's just no, the kind of contamination at a site like this, petroleum, solvents, that doesn't require, evacuation. It can be managed with all the protocols that are in place at this site. The protocols are as follows. If something bad happens, when the cans were found, okay, they had to, the monitoring was done, and everybody on site had to make sure that they didn't need themselves to go into personal protective equipment. Okay, that's the first step. The guys on the site have their own personal protective equipment requirements and OSHA requirements. So they have to first figure out if they're safe. Then from there, if they're safe, then it goes from either the foam or the water to manage the dust and or vapors, and then the hole gets covered, and then they have to do more investigation to figure out where the source is. Okay, so and that means work stops if something like that happens, and that's happened. That in terms of these two areas, they did have to slow down. They did have to do more evaluation. It's taken weeks to deal with these two areas, the cans and the tanks. We're frankly behind schedule. You want to know about the schedule? We're 2 months behind schedule because of all of this.
Can I ask,
because of dealing with these problem areas that we found.
on the day that the 2 tanks were removed, they were scheduled to be removed at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Why did Northeastern Environmental begin the removal at 9 o'clock in the morning? And why was the health department or the DEC not there? The mayor, in his re-election campaign promise, said no soil will be moved, nothing will happen unless it was monitored, and nobody was on site when that happened. The fire department showed up after the fact.
They did come on site. I met with them the day that we uncovered the tanks
Who
to
came on site?
evaluate it. I believe it was the health, I met with the health department.
Yes, that Carlos, that was after the fact, after the tanks were removed, an hour or so after the tanks were removed. Those are supposed to be monitored. The removal is supposed to be monitored.
DEC was on site?
No, they weren't.
No, they weren't.
It
No,
was
they weren't.
HDR was on site with us.
None of the regulatory agencies were on site when this happened.
The tanks weren't actually removed from the site.
They were removed from the excavation. They were removed.
Yes.
Same thing.
I mean, DEC, we can't control when they come and when they don't come. I mean, they typically are there when big things are happening. I don't know why you weren't there that particular.
But why did they start earlier than was scheduled with the health department?
I wasn't aware that.
I mean, the tank removal company is a professional, that's what they do.
Dwayne scheduled the appointment with the health department for 1 o'clock. He started just after 9 o'clock. Can someone tell us why?
The health department they have to do an inspection before, and then from that, they evaluate what requirements we have to undertake to then formally close it out as a spill or a tank abandonment. So there are procedures that go through, so they have to come in and do an evaluation of the site. I'm not entirely sure if they have to be there before the tanks are pulled. It's my understanding, I've done other ones off-site of brownfield cleanups where the tank's pulled first, the soil is excavated, and then they do their inspection.
But why did the schedule change?
That I can't tell you. That may have just been with the contractor. I mean, they started at 1. Patrick, if you could go to the slide with them trucking off one of the USTs, it's not time stamped, but I mean, if they started at say 9, say this was at, 1 o'clock, that's halfway through the day.
But it was the removal of the tanks that were supposed to happen at 1 o'clock. Not
That-
off-site, the actual removal of the tanks from the excavation.
So is that something that you're saying that the contractor changed their work schedule? That may have just been to accommodate their time frame as a business operation. I'm not sure why they did that. But the tanks were inspected and the report will be filed and closed out in accordance with the health department and the DEC.
What happened to the spill that occurred from the backhoe that had a sudden break of some sort in the leak?
Yep, so that day there was a leak in the hydraulic line. There's no pictures of that in the slide, but we do have photographs of it. That soil was it was contained with absorbent pad and polytarping. Those were disposed of as waste material, and the soil itself was disposed of in addition to any of the excavated soil with the trucking deliveries. So that was excavated out.
I just want to clarify something about the camp monitors, because although you have the information instantly in real time, the community does not have that information immediately. Because from what I understand, you have raw data that you're reading. It has to be put in a document that the community can understand, and then it's posted on our website, which David does. But the readings are, we see them, I think the last one that is posted, David, I think is April 20th or something. So that's a couple of days later. So no one really knows what's happening. And although there might not be exceedances, there are levels of chemicals coming out of the ground at certain times. You can see that from the charts. Not exceedances, but again, I don't know, the short-term exposure and the long-term exposure, but there might be kids going to the park all the time, and is that considered long-term exposure of a certain chemical? Or people that live on Marbledale Road, and then they have a long-term exposure of a small amount of TCE or a small amount of Freon or whatever. So I just want to make a statement that we don't have that information instantly, and even though there's not exceedances, there are levels of chemicals and VOCs coming out of the ground.
So as we collect that data, we then assess it and then share it with you.
Yep. Yeah, I know you do it as fast as you can, but I'm just saying the community never knows about that immediately. It's not possible, I guess, the way it works, because like I said, we need to read that data, it needs to be translated for the community, so before we know about it, it's a couple days later. Not that everyone's not doing their job or not doing it fast enough, it's just the way it is.
The good news, I know it's hard for everybody to accept this, but the good news is that once those SVE systems are in place, that will not happen from the site anymore.
So we won't see that kind of
No, that's the whole reason we feel that the site has to be remediated. You have to cap a site like this, because the only way you can suck bad vapor out of the ground is to have a hard surface, and then through that you have holes, and you create a vacuum through those holes.
Yeah,
And
I
that's-
just mean now, while that's not happening. This has been going on for a while now.
That's been the way this street has been for 50 years. That's the problem.
There's some stuff going on there. Maybe, not exactly.
You haven't been digging it up for the last 50 years.
It could make it worse.
The vapor across the street is frankly just as bad as on the
I
side.
don't disagree with you, but that's not.
In other words, this is an industrial street.
It's commercial.
So, well,
But there's backyards, and there's
it's
restaurant houses.
So it's not.
right, but
Just
it's mainly an industrial street.
I hate that argument because you say that, but it's literally just a street. There's no buffer between that industrial piece and someone's backyard.
That's right.
That's not, so
That's-
to
that's-
make the argument that this is an industrial street is a poor argument.
No,
Because-
but that's why this stuff is there. That's why the vapors are there. And that's why, at least for this portion of that street, all the vapors will be controlled a year from now, when everything is finally done.
So since you're only going down 15 feet, and we know from eyewitness testimony that there's been dumping that goes down 80 to 100 feet possibly. We don't know what's down there. There could still be leaching into groundwater. There could still be air vapor, vapors moving underground underneath Marbledale Road. So is any effort going to be made to find other vapor pathways?
These SVEs are not just for the top 15 feet, they're for the whole thing. Okay? I mean, you can't dig out a whole landfill like this, but you can control vapors from the entire depth of the landfill.
You can dig out this
Yeah.
whole thing if you really wanted to.
No, you can't.
Why would that be?
It would take, because this community would be impacted for 3 to 4 years, and landfills in this state, where are you gonna take it? Somebody else's backyard? I mean, you don't like the fact that you have this landfill.
No, I
but,
understand that.
Right now,
But it has been done, and it can be done.
No, it's never been done. Never
And
been done.
complete,
No landfills have ever been dug up in the state of New York, no.
not in the state of New York, but they have been done elsewhere.
No, it's not common practice to dig up
I'll send it to you.
landfills. It's very, very, not this deep. There may have been some very shallow landfills and wetlands somewhere, but not an 80-foot deep landfill, no. I'm not aware of that.
So with these vapor extraction systems in place, there's no possibility that vapors will continue to possibly go under Marbledale Road to the other side of the street through utility lines and conduits?
The way it works is concentric circles, okay? So you overlap the wells so that
Right, you're catching
so that
everything.
doesn't happen. I mean, that's why they're doing all the sampling, to be able to demonstrate that at the end of the day.
And then what is the impact to the P sites?
Our site, the way that SVs have to be designed is to pull all the vapor back onto our site from our site, okay? That has no impact on the P sites. That's what DEC has to deal with.
Which still impacts us as a community.
If those sites are contaminated, which I assume that they're similarly contaminated. I mean, all the testimony I've heard over the last few years, no one has ever really explained, at least I haven't heard this, what's in that landfill, part of the landfill up there versus here, you know what I mean? Like, I've never heard anyone really explain, they've always said the landfill, but it's a very long landfill, and so I don't know if some of these worse things happened up there or down there, that's what I think as a community you have to make sure DEC looks at.
I have a different question, totally off this, but how much is the Brownfield project paid by the state? How much is it costing? So, I mean, must have an idea because you're almost through, you're well through
This
the process.
is costing our client 3 times more than he thought it was going to cost. Is that your question?
No. The question is, how much is the state is paying for the Brownfield cleanup, correct?
No. The tax, because the cleanup has gone up so much in cost, my client will not recover the cost of the cleanup from the Brownfield tax credits, if that's your question. In fact, I had to give him that bad news not too long ago. No, he will not get, if you're saying, will he get all the money back? The answer is not even close.
And how much is the project? Not the hotel, the cleanup. How much
The
are we talking
cleanup
about?
at this point is projected to be $7 million. Because of all the extra things that it started as a projected $2 million project, it's now being projected up to $7 million.
And when you put piles in, since there's so much related to the ecology and the remediation, how do you account for those piles? Does the developers pay for everything for the piling putting in?
Yeah.
Or is that related to the brownfield?
No.
He pays for all the piles.
Right.
So the project is now, the brownfield is now 7 million, it was 2 million, and you're saying he has to pay a part of that 7 million?
Most of it, yeah.
Most of the overage over 2 million?
Correct. Right.
Why is he going ahead with the project?
Actually, I've asked myself that question. I really have. I think that, you know, I think he really is dedicated to getting this accomplished. I really do. I mean, I know you may not believe that, but I personally think he is. He's really put a lot of his own money into this. So, and it's gone way beyond where he thought it was going to go because the data wasn't so bad. And so all these extra things we've had to do have really added to the cost.
In other words, it's gone way above what all the previous investigation had told you? You found much worse than you...
No. We've
why
been
did it-
asked to do the same investigation over and over and over again that has come up with the same conclusions, that it's not that bad.
Who's asked you to do these over and over?
As a result of all your advocacy, it's, the DEC has asked us, the village has asked us, it's been in response to all of your inquiries and all of your concerns. And we've been asked to do far more than any other projects I've ever worked on. Now, I'm sure you view that as good, and certainly this has become a very scrutinized and safe project as a result of that, but a lot of the things that we've been asked to do have been double, triple, quadruple the same thing over and over again.
You said that originally the Brownfield project was supposed to cost $2 million.
Right.
And where was the cap? The cap was at $2 million, anything over $2 million the developer pays? Is that what you're saying? So he paid $5 million for the Brownfield? You said it started at 2, and he paid primarily everything over $2 million up to 7.
No, he's paying for everything, okay? There is a benefit in this program where you get some money back through tax credits, but that's not until the project is completely over. He is laying out all this money. There's no money coming in the door from the state of New York.
How much can he recoup? How much of the $7 million can he potentially get back in tax credits?
About a third.
About a third of it. So the rest comes out of his business pocket.
That's right. It's a very complicated formula. It's based on either the cost, you get back a percentage of the cost of the cleanup or a percentage of your project. Here, because the cleanup is so expensive, he's actually being penalized by the way that the tax credits work, that he only gets a percentage of the project, which is not going to help fully pay back, even close to fully paying back the remediation. It's just, it's designed so that it works really well when your cleanup is proportional to your project. But here the cleanup is higher than the proportional value of the project.
Does the developer have the option to pull out at any time?
Yes. Yes. He's a volunteer and he's in a contract, but yes, you can pull out. You can. In which case it would actually become, the community's responsibility.
So the tax credits that you're referring to are from the Brownfield program. Is he going to be reapplying for tax credits through the IDA? Because I understood he did, and then he didn't complete the application process.
No, it's too late for that, right?
No, he could reapply. I was told he could reapply.
Yeah.
It's not a concern for...
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's way too late for that, though. You do that at the beginning when you're a developer, not. It's too, he's already constructing. He would have had to have done that by now. So.
Are there any more environmental questions?
I have one.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know if everyone already knows this, but what is the rapid impact? What is that like? So you're trying to notify all the residents within a certain area, right? Or all the businesses?
What the adjacent property owners have gotten letters saying that a vibration analysis company will come to the property and look at your foundation and make sure, document pictures as to what it looks like now And then if any property owner has a concern after the project is over that their foundation was impacted, there'll be a baseline, picture analysis of what that foundation looked like before, and then they, the property owner could show us what the property looks like afterwards, and then we can hopefully fix, remedy whatever went wrong with the property's foundation. So that's the concept.
But like, is it loud or?
No. No, it's really not loud because the weight is much lighter than the deep dynamic compaction, and from what I understand, it is not any louder than a normal construction piece of equipment than I'm assuming you're already hearing.
Will they be maintaining seismic equipment on site?
Yeah, that's the whole point of this, yeah. So that's a special seismic vibration company. Vibro Analysis is their name. And so I do think people should, we haven't, I don't know, do you know how many people have finally said yes to that?
It's like 13 out of 53.
Well, that was, we sent the letters, the first letters, I forget the exact day, but a week later, within a week, 13 people said yes. And then we sent another set of letters, even though we really didn't have to do that legally, but, I figured, let's do it again. I don't actually know how many people have now said yes. But it really is for the benefit of the property owner, so people should let them inside. They're gonna try to take pictures from the street, even if parties don't let them inside, just for the protection of the homeowners and the property owners. Now, there's a lot of parking lots around, so it doesn't include the parking lots, it's for structures.
For the scientists.
Yes.
For the handheld devices, what do they detect? I'm hearing like camp cannot detect TCEs. I'm wondering what this technology would detect.
So with the photo ionization detector, we're looking at VOC, volatile organic compounds, familiar with petroleum products. And then with the FID, flame ionization detector, we're looking at freon gases.
So those are the two, you're describing two handheld devices?
Two handheld devices.
Okay, and is TCE in there? Is that being
Yes.
detected by those?
Yes.
The PID does as a VOC.
But not as an individual compound, just a cumulative
Yeah.
VOC number.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So we'll see a reading in ppm, parts per million, but then that may be one of many compounds that are showing up, and then from there, that's why we did the Summa canister testings.
How often do you do the Summa canister testing?
We did a series of them. I believe we'll be doing them again when we do the vapor points at locations that we feel are, we're concerned or necessary for.
Is that like weekly or?
No. The handheld devices haven't really warranted anything that's come up as a high number where we feel like we would be concerned for something like that.
But not necessarily
So
an amount that might be considered potentially hazardous for either short-term or long-term exposure. It's just an average that's been developed.
that would be an action level where we would try to suppress it. And to give you an idea, 5 ppm, when we encountered the UST tank and the contaminated soil from the gasoline, we used readings from gasoline in the thousands, where that's a concern. 5 ppm is relatively low. There's not much there.
If I'm understanding, each
Right, that's a different
particular,
threshold.
yeah, exactly. So what is 5 ppm might not be dangerous for
Correct.
something, but for TCE, it might be.
Or
And
something
that's, so you have an aggregate, a conglomerate of your measurement.
So that 5 ppm.
So 5 ppm is not the safety threshold for everything that might be in there. I think that was what you were trying
Basically
to
what I'm trying
establish.
to establish. Yeah.
So that level was decided between the DEC, HES, everyone collaborated on that. I don't know what particular compounds, what their action levels are individually. That's something that I would have to reference. But I know that the 5 ppm was what was decided upon by the DEC.
And there's a formula, I presume, based
They-
on the
that-
known
It's
contaminants
for-
that are there?
For the whole state, I mean, that's.
Oh, that's just a standard?
It's not just for the site.
Okay, it's a standard.
So if any individual compound went above that, it would trigger it,
So it's, yeah,
Or combination.
or any combination would trigger it. So even that, because I think it's a little confusing still, maybe just to me, the information that like independent environmental consultants have gathered is being processed a little bit differently than the information that you guys are processing. So to compare the two things is hard because it seems like they're giving really specific amounts for hundreds of compounds.
There's different units of measure.
And then it sounds like what you have is more of like a yes or no, or
well,
like.
that's 2 different testing methods too. I think what you're referring to is maybe possibly the SUMA canister testings, and that's different compounds have different chemical structures, and then that has to be all figured in with the air ratio and what was in the SUMA, where we've done that as well, and we have that data. But what you originally asked was the handheld devices, and that's just that's like a mobile sniffer to give us an idea if there is anything that we really should be, what's going on here? Is this a concern? Okay, we're not seeing any readings. There's not really a concern. Or, okay, there's readings here. What are we looking at? Does it warrant further investigation? When we pulled the USTs, we set a SUMA canister adjacent to the excavation so that we could see what was going on in the air around the excavation.
Could a lot of the concerns that the community had and the expense that the developer has experienced been mitigated by tenting these excavations in retrospect?
That I don't know. I have no idea.
No. Again, it's just not, it's not bad enough. I mean, these measurements of 5 ppm are used throughout the state. This is not special for this site. It is standard methodology.
I understand, but I'm saying he's now expended $5 million over what was expected. If that $5 million was put into tenting this excavation.
You can't do this kind of a project under a tent. It's just not possible. You just can't. You'd have to have, how big would the tent have to be?
I don't know.
3
It's done
acres?
elsewhere.
You just can't do it. Okay, the only tent that's been done in the Brownfield program was down in Queens, right opposite Manhattan, on a highly, highly contaminated site. It's just not what this is. It's just not. I know you still have a hard time believing that.
From your
because
mouth to God's ears.
but
That's what
it's
it
just, it just doesn't justify that kind of working under plastic. I mean, the guys are standing there all day, and they're not, including the DEC, and they're not putting on respirators. I mean, so the levels just don't justify a tent. And no, it wouldn't make it cheaper. It would not have made it cheaper. That a tent, you'd have to have literally moving tents in addition to all these monitors the whole time. It's just not, you just can't do it physically. You can't do it.
Did you have?
Yeah, one question. When you finish the pile driving on the hotel building itself, you're gonna go to the restaurant part right after that?
I don't know if they'll be moving up there, or if that even requires piles at the restaurant. It does.
Isn't it?
Do you know if they're going directly to that, or if they're concentrating?
I don't think that, I think they'll be doing the utility work in the parking lot first, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the restaurant footprint is part of the cap,
Right.
so it'll happen, yeah.
Yes.
I don't remember the exact number, you just mentioned about having to reference certain chemical acceptable levels, I guess. Did you mean like New York State's standards for each chemical?
So there's different standards for different analyses and different compounds, yes.
Okay, so we've been concerned, I shouldn't say we, but many in the community have been concerned with the TCE levels that have been measured elsewhere, and I'd like for you to answer this, the scientist. If these handheld devices are only picking up when it hits 5 parts per million, you said, and the state standard or the don't go above this point is 2, maybe it was parts per million, excuse me, because I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. There's a gap there, right? So if it's already, let's say, dangerous after 2, and we're not going to hear about it until 5 in a kind of a conglomerate type of thing, is that something to worry about?
So I don't know what the actual levels for TCE are. Again, like you said, I would have to look it up. I mean, it's a concern, and it's based on exposure over long periods of time. I believe they set those standards based on workers working in that environment around those chemicals, where at what point would they require a respirator.
Okay. Yeah, I think there were short-term tests and long-term tests, numbers, like different number for each.
Yeah, that I'm not sure. I would have to look into that. Is there anything else? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.